Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. A very warm welcome from Westpac Scholar headquarters. And thank you very much for tuning in to the Westpac Future Leaders Scholarship webinar today. So I'm Amy Lydon. I will be your host today, and we will also hear from Esther Schroeder and Jared Granger Brown, who are 2019 Westpac Future Leaders Scholars. So they'll be sharing their experience of the scholarship program. So as we go along, I'll run through a little bit about the program. So I'd also like to acknowledge my colleague Rob, who's here helping set up. Thank you very much, Rob, for being here, and also Lauren Hill, who's silently in the room here, but has done much for the promotion of this webinar and the program in general. The agenda today, what we'll be going through, I'll do a quick overview of the scholarship program, the package, all the goodies that are included in the scholarship package. I'll run through the eligibility criteria, the selection process, give you a few application tips, and then we'll hear from our 2019 Future Leaders Scholars, Esther and Jared, followed by a Q&A session after that. So before I get into the Future Leaders Scholarship, I guess I wanted to share a little bit of background about the Westpac Scholars Trust. And some of you may be thinking to yourselves, why is a bank providing scholarships? What is the purpose here? Are the scholarships for studying financial services or business, or is it a way for Westpac to get more employees? You know, what's behind this program and why does it exist? And so those are a lot of assumptions that people make about the program, and they're not correct. So really the program was set up ahead of our 200th birthday in 2017. We're Australia's oldest company and oldest bank. And Westpac really wanted to do something extra special to celebrate this 200 years, and something that was forward-looking and that actually contributed to the future of Australia. So, and what better way to do that than by investing in education? You know, that's a real investment in the future of Australia. So the bank gifted $100 million for us to set up the Westpac Scholars Trust, and a promise to award 100 scholarships a year forever. So to date, that was a couple of years ago now, we have now awarded over 400 scholarships and invested over $20 million into our Westpac Scholars. We have 5 scholarship programs, and obviously the one that you're here today to hear more about is the Future Leaders Scholarship Program. We do award 17 of these every year nationally. We now have over 70 Future Leaders Scholars, and we've awarded $8 million into this particular program, and that's through our 8 university partners. So in terms of the offer, let's talk a little bit about the package. There's really 4 main components to it. It is valued at up to $120,000. It's aimed at postgraduate study, so master's by coursework, master's by research, or PhD studies at one of our 8 university partners. It covers living expenses, so that's a stipend of approximately $28,000 a year for master's students, and also PhD students normally also receive an RTP, another type of stipend award, so they actually get an additional $21,000 in addition to the $28,000, which is funded by the RTP, so close to $50,000 for PhD students. The overseas experience is, you know, we set this program up because we're partnering with Australian universities. It is about backing Australians and you know, really wanting to contribute to that growth and prosperity of Australia. But we do recognize the value in global connections. We know how important that is and how important those collaborations are. And so we've allowed up to $50,000 for you to tailor international experiences. And these really, it just depends on how they fit into your study plan. It's up to you to how you decide to do this and put forward what you want to do. So it could be internships, research collaborations, attending short conferences or courses, etc. And then the next thing is the Leadership Development Program, which I'll talk about in just a second. I'll get to that in a minute. And then also the access to the W100 Scholars Network, which I'll also talk about as well. So the Leadership Development Program, it is a 9-month program. It was put together, it was a collaboration done with Westpac, the AGSM at UNSW, University of Sydney, and ANU. And we've put together this program. It's a 9-month program. And really, we've had great feedback from our scholars. Transformational is the word that comes up consistently in what we hear and what we see in the feedback from our scholars. It is a chance, so there's the program, just to give you a taste of it, we have 2 main residentials. The first one, we bring everyone together, so it's the 17 of the current year into Sydney in February every year. That kicks off the program. It's a 5-day residential, and there's 20 presenters and panelists participating in the program across 4 venues. We cover things such as self-leadership, unconscious bias, presence and impact, applied design thinking, and also pitch presentation. So it's pretty comprehensive, and just really a great opportunity to connect with the cohort, the other, the full 17 scholars that are that year. The second one we have is in Canberra, and that happens in August every year. That's a 3-day program. It's also residential. And what this does is really incorporates the Australia 360 conference. It's a conference run by ANU, and really looking at the challenges and opportunities facing Australia as a nation and what that means. So a bigger picture conversation, more opportunity to connect again with the future leaders in your cohort, and also other Canberra folks, ANU folks, to better understand how the government works. And that's just a quick overview of the program, just to give you an idea. There's the 2 residentials. We also come together for a summit, which I'll talk about in a second, and we have some online sessions in between as well. So the W100 Scholars Network, it really is, it's an amazing network of diverse individuals. I mean, we have over, as I said, 400 scholars. It's scholars from across the 5 scholarship programs. So you will be interacting with social change fellows, Asian exchange scholars, research fellows, young techs, as well as future leaders. So it's a real opportunity to, collaborate and have access to some very different people out there doing interesting things. Yet you're all, have those sort of attributes of Westpac scholars. There's lots of opportunities for the Westpac 100. There's events, retreats, workshops, other online opportunities to get together. I guess the flagship event that we have every year is our annual Scholars Summit. And what we do is we bring together the 100 scholars from that year across the 5 programs. We bring you all to Sydney. Next year it's going to be the 2nd and 3rd of April. And we have a series of bespoke workshops and keynote speakers, and it's just a great and a great party as well, and a great celebration of the scholars, and great opportunity to connect with everyone. So that's the package of the scholarship. We've got, I'll jump into the eligibility criteria. So there's really, and this can all be found on the website and the funding guidelines as well. So the main thing, whilst we don't have a prescriptive, requirement for a particular course or field of study, you can be studying really anything. But I guess the overarching theme that has to come through in your application is there has to be alignment to at least one of our funding priorities. So we have 3 funding priorities: strengthening ties with Asia, technology and innovation, and enabling positive social change. So I guess it's just thinking about how your plans and your vision for your study is going to be tied to one of those, at least one of those funding priorities. Your university must have demonstrated world-class capability. This is particularly the case if you're doing a PhD. and there's some details on that on the website and in the funding guidelines. There's the Australian Research Council website that you can access to determine that, or get in touch with us if you have any questions. You must have completed your undergraduate degree within 5 years. So this one is, it has to be your first undergraduate degree, or you must have completed by December of this year. In terms of the academic qualifications and marks, we're looking for a minimum of 75 WAM, so your average grade that you've gotten in your undergraduate degree. And we get a lot of questions about this and how, and someone's just asked, I've just noticed on the questions, H1A or H2B. It doesn't really matter. And if you're at 74 or 73%, there's an opportunity on the application to comment around why that might have been. They might have had particular challenges or what have you. So there is room to kind of discuss that in the application. That's just one measure. That's one thing that the assessors look at. So just keep that in mind. You have to be an Australian citizen or hold permanent resident status. And also you must be commencing your postgraduate study next year, not before. And this comes up a bit, some people have already done a master's and they're commencing another master's for this and are applying for this scholarship. That's fine, but you must not have already commenced the study that you're intending to do for this particular scholarship. Okay, in key dates, as I said, the applications are open now. They close on the 4th. There's really 4 key stages. So stage 1 is all of the eligibility checks. That's all done online. You will be notified by the end of September if you're progressing to the next stage. The stage 2 is an online assessment tool. It's a psychometric assessment. It takes about 30 to 45 minutes to complete. So you'll be invited to do that. And then stage 3 will be the university shortlisting. So each of the universities have a shortlisting panel, and they decide who the shortlisted candidates will be. There may be an interview. Some of the universities do face-to-face interviews or Skype interviews, so it just depends on which university you're at. And then you will be, at that stage, invited to attend, so this will be kind of late October, invited to attend the National Assessment Centre in Sydney. We fly all 32 Future Leader finalists into Sydney for a full day. It's an intense day, but it's great also. So it's interview, and there's a group activity that you get assessed on. There's a breakfast. There's an opportunity to meet lots of Westpac people and also the other finalists. So, and that happens on the 9th and 10th of December. And pretty much straight away after that if know the outcome of that. Okay, I'll just go through some application tips, and I will get to your questions. I'll just come back to them once I have a chance to read them all. So we'll do that at the end. Application tips. So really there's 4 areas that I would suggest thinking about in your application. The first one is really gathering that information, reading the funding guidelines, reading the website, frequently asked questions, checking out the profiles of the existing future leaders, even reaching out to some of them and having a phone call or a coffee if you can. They're usually very, very happy to do that. So really just doing all your homework around what is required, what is the eligibility, what do I need to get together for this application, what are the things I need. The second thing I would suggest is really reflecting on what your vision for yourself is, what your goals are, why do you want to do what you want to do, what drives you, what are your motivators, and how does this tie into our funding priorities at the Westpac Scholars Trust. So, really thinking about that and working that out in advance. The third area is around enrolling the support of others. You'll need a personal reference and a academic reference, so just thinking about who you're going to need for those. If you're doing a PhD, you'll need a letter of support from the head of school or your intended supervisor. So yeah, and just getting in there early with a lot of these people as everyone's busy. Also, just really enrolling other, friends, family members to be proofreaders, to give you feedback on the application. It could be other future leaders that that have gone through the program already. Really getting that support of others. And the fourth area is that I would just recommend is just really being thorough. And these are, I think they're obvious, but it's amazing sometimes what comes through. But just being thorough in the way you answer the questions and answering all parts of the questions and watching the punctuation and all the rest. And also thinking about the audience. I mean, these will be people not necessarily experts in your area. So just really being able to communicate that to anyone and in a way that can be understood. And also just thinking about those, attributes. So in the funding guidelines, there are the attributes that are listed on that back page. This is what we are looking for, and this is what you will be assessed on as qualities of a person. Now that kind of wraps my bit up, and we'll come back to the questions in just a minute. But I would like firstly to introduce you to Esther Schroeder. So Esther is a 2019 Westpac Future Leaders Scholar. She's a medical doctor with an interest in humanitarian mental health. And she's currently completing a master's in global health at the University of Sydney with a focus on refugee health. And before she became a doctor, Esther worked for a not-for-profit in community development. And she also has worked in healthcare settings around rural Australia, Vanuatu, and South Africa. And very well-traveled person here. So yes, I'd love to introduce Esther now to share her experience of being a Westpac Scholar. Esther.
Oh, thanks so much, Amy. I hope everyone can hear me okay. And if not, please give me some feedback. If you have any questions at all while I'm chatting today, please pop them in the question box and we'll do them in the Q&A. So like Amy said, I'm a Future Leaders Scholar this year. I did my medical training, and at the moment, as well as doing my Masters through the Sydney Uni, I'm working with the Climate and Health Alliance and also at the Asylum Seeker Resource Centre. I thought today I'd talk a little bit both about the application process and then my experience of the scholarship. So first of all, about the application process. I read mine again in preparing for today's webinar, and I really didn't realise actually how bold I had been in my application, and I think that's something that I probably would encourage you all to think about as well. It really is your moment to share who you are and what your vision is for Australia. The people who you're applying for, that will be reading applications, they don't know you, and it's your chance to really, put your big dream out there. That's what I did, and I'm so glad that I did get to share that. I think, everyone who's listening today, I'm sure you've got your own fields, whether you're wanting to go down and do a master's or a PhD, and sometimes those fields can be really specific and you can feel perhaps a bit compartmentalized by what you're doing. And I think something that's so great about the Westpac Scholarship is that it's such a broad scholarship and cohort base, and you can share all your breadth of experiences and all the little bits of your life that might seem maybe a bit disjointed in your application, and show the full picture of who you are and what you're involved in and what you care about. I guess it's a little bit about thinking about maybe what's expected of you versus what you really could do, and I would say that they really want to know what you could do or what you would really like to do. So they don't have any assumptions about you. Put your big dream out there, and in terms of you need to propose a budget and what you'd like to do with your international placement. I'd really encourage you to be creative with that. there are other scholarships out there that say, well, you have to specifically use this money to go to this place to do this course or to undertake this training, but that's not what Westpac's about. And you can really say, oh, I've always wanted to go and do this, thing that I think will really enrich where I'm going and what I want to do, and why not put that in your application and be really creative with what you're suggesting. In terms of the scholarship itself, so Jared and I are now, I guess, halfway through our first year of the scholarship. It's been such a fantastic opportunity. It started, like Amy was saying, with our residential week at the start of the year in February, and that was a real chance to step outside of your own field, your own bubble of what you've been working in, and I guess it was a chance to reflect on leadership in general, those much broader skills that are skills for life and for your career, and think about what your style of leadership is, and develop it quite conscientiously, which I think is a real gift to have that time and space to be able to do that. And of course, it's really strengthened by the great cohort that you have. I was super intimidated when I read all the other scholars who were going to be part of the 17 future leaders with myself. And I was a bit apprehensive about meeting everyone at the leadership sessions. And it was just the most wonderful experience, so enriching, everyone coming from very different walks of life and very different backgrounds. And it was such a positive experience. As Amy said, you've got the summit, and then you've also got what Jared and I are getting ready to go to in a fortnight, which will be our final residential in Canberra for the Future Leaders program. But it's more than that. It's everything that's in between sessions as well. It's people, the other leaders, giving you a call to say, asking you about how you're going with something that you told them that you were working on. Or, for instance, I had a really lovely experience that recently I have a series of podcasts that are out, and one of the future leaders who has nothing to do with my area at all had sat and listened to my podcast and let me know that he really enjoyed them. And so it's a wonderful supportive network to be a part of and to be really enthusiastic about. For instance, Jared and I and some of the other future leaders, we even had a chance to all catch up in Tasmania a few months ago, which was so great. That was just something we organised ourselves, but I think it really shows how passionate we all were about being together. And it was in some ways a really relaxed holidays, but in other days the conversations were all such interesting, in-depth, enriching conversations, which was just such a joy to be a part of. As Amy's also said, the whole scholar network, you've got these 17 future leaders scholars, but you actually have 100 people on scholarships each year. And I've been really overwhelmed with how keen everyone is to really be involved with each other and interact with each other and support each other. There was an initiative this year called the 3 Coffee Challenge, where we were encouraged to get coffees with other people across the network, and it was such a fun idea, and I got really into it, and it was so nice that I chatted to someone who's doing things all about contract law in Southeast Asia. I was talking to someone who's really into entrepreneurship and supporting migrants through like small business startups. So it's all these things that I perhaps would never have had a chance to talk to or be involved with before that I've had the chance to do through being part of the scholarship and part of the wider network. And it really is what you make of it. I think sometimes when people say it's what you make of it, it's sort of a way of saying there's not much there and you've got to put your own effort in. And that's definitely not the case with the Westpac Scholarship. With the Westpac Scholarship, there's so much there, and you've just got to put your hand out and be a part of it, and take up the opportunities that perhaps you think, oh, that doesn't sound much like me, or I don't know anything about that, but you get involved and you learn so much through that. I would say that that collaborative and supportive nature would be a real key aspect of my experience, but also the challenge. I think the people who run our leadership program, they really want us to be on top of what we're thinking about, and challenge us to develop, be reflective, put ourselves out there. And it's really nice to have someone kind of in your court who's pushing you to try something different or think about what you're doing, and not just sort of follow along the usual kind of, oh yeah, I'm just at uni and I'm just doing my normal thing. So I think those would be perhaps my main comments. Don't be intimidated, just put out your big dream out there, and best of luck to everyone who's applying. And thank you so much, Amy and Lauren and all of the Westpac team. Everyone who will be a future leader next year will know how great they are and what a support they are to all of us. So I think it's handing over.
Thanks, Esther. That's great. Thank you. And yeah, Jared, I'll just tell you a little bit about you. So Jared is a PhD candidate at Monash University, and he studied at the Monash Sustainable Development Institute, and his PhD aims to integrate the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, into urban and city planning. So thanks for being here, Jared.
Thank you very much, Amy. As Esther said, if there's any problems with the audio or any technical things, just pop it down in the chat, as there always is with these things. Thanks for the introduction, Amy. I'm Jared. As you heard, I'm a PhD candidate and a 2019 Future Leaders Scholar. So today I kind of want to just cover two main points, one referring to the application process and one more a reflection on the scholarship more broadly. So the first point I wanted to touch on was using the application as quite a valuable development opportunity in itself. So obviously no one really enjoys applications, but this one can be used to leverage something quite useful. And that's focusing on kind of broad society-wide goals. So the Trust's 3 focus areas, which we heard about earlier, are really useful to help broaden your scope and your horizons, whether that be in relation to your research or just your kind of vision more broadly. So what is it that you do? Why is it important? Why should people really care and be invested in what you're trying to accomplish? So by kind of undertaking the application process and going through all different questions and different sections and putting pen to paper really helps focus and force you to conceptualize what you're doing, why you're doing it, and why it's important. So reflecting back on my application, for my PhD, I had a general technical idea and how it might theoretically work in relation to the literature, but that's kind of it. I had this kind of little brain cloud, but that was it. As I progressed through the application, it kind of forced me to sit down with my supervisors, think about how it might work in relation to Australia's future, Melbourne's future, where I'm from, and how it might be more applicable to society or communities more broadly. As this progressed through the application, I found that I was a bit more confident and more able to kind of succinctly communicate to anyone I was talking to why my research was important, why it was interesting, and why it was valuable to both my city, but also my country's future, even if in just some small way. And so I'd really encourage you to grapple and to undertake the application as much as you can. Firstly, obviously, because it's an important part of the scholarship process, but also because it will really help you identify what you're doing, why you're doing it, and why it's important. In effect, regardless of the outcome, the application process is going to be really valuable and worthwhile task that will help strengthen and define both your vision and your journey towards it. So my second point is more broadly about the scholarship journey and the process that I've been on and all the other future leaders in my cohort have been on as well. So obviously each individual component of this scholarship is incredibly valuable, whether that's the cohort, the W100 network, the leadership development, international experiences, all of them are incredibly valuable. When I was applying, I was looking at each of these in isolation. I was thinking, oh, I could learn and share so much from my cohort. I could use the overseas experience to do some international fieldwork for my project. What I realize now is that it's better to view these all together. Collectively, these experiences give you a sense of freedom. It's a freedom to grow, to explore, and even just to evolve in general. In my previous point, I mentioned working towards your vision or your goal. what it is that ties your aspirations together, whether it be research, whether it be your external experiences, whether it just be your passions in general. It's a bumpy road to try and tie this together, to understand it, and to start working to achieve them. What I found that all of these little experiences, all these little pieces of the scholarship, all of these little bits of support from Westpac, all add up to a real sense of freedom to pursue your vision and what your goal is. It really gives you the freedom to strike out and really engage on your journey, to learn from other scholars, to go overseas, to learn from everyone involved at Westpac. So I'd really encourage you to not look at this as little different pieces that could really help what you can do. Look at it as a sense of agency that Westpac is behind you and can support you if you're successful, and really support your dream and your goal and your vision. So I hand back over to Amy now, and happy to stick around for any specific questions. Thanks very much.
Great, thank you so much, Jared. That's fantastic. Okay, so we're gonna go to the questions, and I'll read out a few as we go along. So, and there were a few like this. There were a couple of questions around the focus areas, and if our application covers 2 of the focus areas, is it better to just focus on one in the application? And what I would say to that is if there are two that you can touch on, definitely include both or all 3 even if that's the case. If it truly does align with those focus areas. And another similar question that someone raised was around, I have, so many, similar to this, I have so many different, projects that I want to do. How do I decide on the one for this application? Can I do multiple applications? No, don't do that to yourself. It just pick one, and really it is about, picking one that is probably the most aligned with what we're looking for. And there was another question around that are the assessors, the National Selection Panel, are they looking at the project or the person? And the answer is both, but this is, and you might have alluded, that might have come through in this when the scholars were just speaking before. It is about backing the person, so that is important. And so we do back the person if you have an idea of what you want to do, and that's terrific. And really, but try to as much as possible align it with one of our focus areas, at least one. The next one is, yeah, and again, there's a few, I'll kind of, because there's a lot of questions here, there's quite a few around academic performance. So, someone asked, would an upward trajectory of academic performance also be taken into account? And the answer is absolutely yes. The assessors look at that. So if you might have had a really poor result the first semester, which that happens quite often, that's fine. And again, we use the 75% WAM as a bit of a guide. Ultimately, it's up to the universities that do the shortlisting what they believe to be is going to get through. So yeah, I think we take all that into consideration and actually include anything. If you did have some struggles for whatever reason, or you were caring for somebody, or whatever that is, include that in the application. And what happens if you don't have a grade, a pass-fail? Again, that we'll just take it into consideration. I know some courses at some universities don't have an actual grade; they just have pass-fail. But the assessors will look at your overall application and your references as well. Is honors considered undergraduate or postgraduate? It is considered undergraduate. Okay, again, that's going back to the academic results for students with an undergraduate and a postgraduate degree. Do you consider both? And again, the answer is yes on that. Okay, and then there's a few around the budgeting. So in terms of budgeting for international experience and overseas travel, so which costs should we consider? registration costs, etc., flights, all that. There are some guidelines in the funding guidelines around budgets and what's acceptable. And I would encourage you to talk to your university if you want to really delve into that. But again, we also realize that you are estimating something that you might not be undertaking for another, year and a half, 2 years away, and actually, it might even change. So, there is flexibility in that, but it is good to kind of scope it out and get help, get support from your university in terms of what you want to do. Did Jared or Esther, do you have any suggestions on that, on the budgeting for the overseas experience?
I think I just included all the elements that I thought that it would legitimately cost me to go and do the things that I proposed. But absolutely what Amy said, that I think there's flexibility, and Westpac's realistic that, sometimes what you think you'd like to do might change, or the opportunity changes, or elements of it change. So I think as long as Amy, you might say differently, but I would say my feeling was, as long as you show that you've thought about what you'd like your overseas placement to be and why, and some costing around that, then that sort of shows that you've got an idea about where you want to go.
I probably echo that, and obviously that the costing is important, and try to get ballpark figures and have a think about what it will cost. But I think, at least for mine, what was more important was the why I wanted to do it, to try and think of an interesting reason, what would be most valuable to my experience, and how it would work with my research area was probably more valuable than specific costings or kind of getting into the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with that. And there is, a section on the application where you can kind of, you provide the rationale for what you're proposing to do. So that's great. Thank you. There's also a few questions around, so how much weight is given to the online assessment tool? Is there any way to prepare for it? We get this question every year. There really isn't any way to prepare for it. It's just having a go. I guess the main thing to know, and this will be in the instructions if you get through to this stage, is just to really make sure you're in a quiet room with no distractions, with a good internet connection, and just you have that good block of time to be able to do it, and obviously fresh and not trying to do it late at night or when you're tired. And in terms of the weight, there's not a specific weight. It's just another data point that the assessors use as part of the whole overall package that they're looking at, which is you. So yeah, hope that helps. So another question, is there pre-qualification, either a master's or a bachelor's, or would a graduate diploma and several graduate certificates be eligible? Let me just see if I understand that correctly. So that's from Liam. Yeah, I mean, I guess as long as as long as you're commencing on a new postgraduate course. So, for example, if you were doing a graduate certificate in commerce, but then we're going on to do a master's, that you wouldn't be eligible. But if you had done a graduate certificate in something completely different, and we've had some of our future leaders have done that, and then they decide to, do something different as their postgraduate. And there's a couple of questions on the references. So what does academic reference mean? If I did undergrad a few years ago and currently working now, is a work reference suitable? So we really do need an academic. So a personal reference can be someone that has known you for more than 2 years. An academic reference must be someone that has actually taught you or knows you in the context of, a university setting. So I know that this may be challenging if you haven't studied for a while, but hopefully you'll be able to find a teacher, from your undergraduate that can actually do this. And there are templates on the website that you download. It's very specific around what we require in those references. Okay. someone calling in from Talia has, oh no, she's left, from a bumpy bus in rural Nepal. Okay. I'll say it anyway. It looks like she's left but she might be listening in after we, on the recorded message. I'd love to hear what the interplay between the Trust 3 focus is and how important this might be for the applicant to consider. Yeah, you know, really, it can just be one, you can just have one focus area. It could be enabling positive social change. So these 3 areas came about when we set up the foundation or the trust, in that these were 3 areas that we felt that you know, were Australia's biggest challenges and opportunities. So that's why those 3 focus areas were chosen. So they don't necessarily interlink. They can, but as long as you have at least one that you can focus on for your application, that's good. That's all we need. Okay, and then we have one from Robert. I received an offer to study for semester 2 of this year, but needed to defer the offer. So I will be commencing next year. Does that situation still meet the criteria of commencing in 2020? Received an offer to study. I think as long as you haven't commenced study, it should well do, Roberta. So if you have any questions, just get in touch with us directly and we'll talk to your university. Okay. My research area is similar to Esther's. Would this preclude me from the scholarship or make me less likely to be successful? That's from Amelia. Thank you, Amelia. No, it wouldn't. We've had, you know, a few of our scholars in similar, you know, study paths. So yeah, absolutely not. So please, and we encourage you to apply. And next one is, do I let the university know I've applied for the scholarship, or does Westpac? So we will actually send all of the eligible applications to each university, so they'll get all the information. Is there a registration fee? Oh, I hadn't thought about that. No, no registration fee. Okay, all right, and this one's for Esther. Okay, so Brendan Lee, and I'll just read it out. Thanks for your time, Esther. I'm a final year med student interested in visual health, particularly in strategies to prevent ocular trauma and expanding Australia's collaboration with China in this area. However, I would also like to continue into the medical workplace as a JMO so that I can continue progressing towards specialty training. Do you think it is feasible to balance internship and this program? How did you decide about delaying entry into the medical workforce? Any other tips would be appreciated.
Sure. Hi. That sounds amazing. Yes, we've actually got one of the other scholars. He is an intern this year, so he's doing a Master of Public Health as part of the program, and obviously doing the leadership program, and is doing full-time work. He's definitely very busy, but he's doing it. Yeah, I myself, I guess I'm more interested. I've made some decisions. I'm more interested in public health, and so I'm not working clinically at the moment. But no, definitely, it's possible.
Great. And I might actually, while you're there, Esther, there's another one that's directed to you and Jared both. Can you shed some light on what overseas projects, courses, collaborations Esther and Jared decided on, and how they found those ideas, and what were their motivations?
Sure. So actually mine is coming up in a few weeks' time. I'm going to Beirut to do a course called Mental Health in Complex Emergencies, which is run through Fordham University, which is based in the US. Yeah, that's something, I guess, through the work that I've already been doing, I'd had my eye on, but I guess without the support of this scholarship, I wouldn't have had the financial ability to be able to go and do this course. So that was in my application, and I actually have a second overseas possible internship that I've put down for in Jordan, but that's still being worked out. So that's still a bit of a maybe in terms of logistics. Yeah, Jared?
So mine's pretty much the same as when I wrote the application, because I'm not too far into my PhD at the moment. So mine is similar to one of the questions I saw asked not too long ago, which is going over to be a visiting scholar in a university lab in Europe. So doing some research collaboratively with that group, but then also using it as an opportunity to get some data and some interviews for my actual PhD. So kind of using the international experience to kind of improve and enhance my PhD project. And then I also included some conferences as well, strategically located, where I could also do some more interviews more in Asia. So kind of intertwining personal growth, scholarship exchange, and some field work as well. For me, that is.
Great, thank you. And also, we've got another question for you both. Do you think this scholarship for Masters by Coursework is suitable for someone straight out of university, or would it be more targeted at people with a bit more work experience under their belt? What do you both think?
Well, there's plenty of people who are straight out of university and doing the Masters by Coursework. So definitely they're all benefiting from it a lot. And I'm doing a Masters by Coursework, but I'm not straight out of uni, my undergrad. I think it's a great chance to do it at any stage, really, because it supports you from where you're at. And so I would definitely encourage you to apply. I mean, for myself, I'm really enjoying doing my Masters by Coursework and being really rich by doing the leadership alongside it.
More so for the, I'm just finishing a Masters by Coursework, but I've been in the university system literally since I was 18 up until this point. Obviously, I've had real world experiences in between that, and that's kind of what I drew on for my application, but 100% don't feel like you need to have left the academic system or anything. Definitely just go apply for it anyway, because that's what I did.
Great, thanks. And I might also, there was a question around age limits. So someone asked, is there an age limit to applying, or is it open to mature students? And there isn't an age limit. There is, you just must have completed your first undergraduate degree within the last 5 years. And I guess the reason for that is it is targeted at those earlier in their career rather than later in their career. Okay. And another one for you two, Esther and Jared. What do you think specifically stood out to assessors about your application? They want the secret sauce.
Oh, good question. I feel like you'd have to ask the assessors. But one thing I really went into it very strong in my mind was I just really wanted to be myself and show who I was as a person, more than just the course or the area that I'm in. I wanted to show, who I am and why. I guess I've been overseas before this, and I came back to Australia feeling really passionate about I guess contributing to our country, and that's what I wanted to show. So I don't know about the secret sauce, Amy, but I think something that that was my thing. I just really wanted to be myself, because I thought if I'm not being myself on the day and then I get it, well then they haven't really given it to me. So yeah.
Thank you.
I would definitely echo that. Just be yourself. I kind of had a decision when I was making the application and then before the interviews, because a lot of the things I've done aren't really that linked. I've changed kind of course and direction and kind of trajectory quite a few times. And so I was trying to decide whether I should map out a kind of a clear link between them and try and show that I was always building to this grand thing, which I'm now presenting. But thankfully, my supervisor kind of set me down before. It's just like, no, just go and be yourself. Tell them why you made the decisions, why things failed, why things worked, and why you chose to do all these kind of weird and strange things. And I think that authenticity is really the secret sauce, if there is one.
Great. Yeah, and I think that's a really important thing is yeah, and I had that in my notes, but I didn't say it about just, tips, just really, yeah, be yourself. I mean, that is what the assessors are looking for. So I want to thank Esther and Jared for joining us today. Really appreciate having the scholar perspective. And I also, again, want to thank Rob for helping with all the technical stuff, and Lauren as well for her hand in the promotion of this and the program. So yeah, please reach out if you have any questions. So hope everyone has a lovely afternoon, and just really encourage you to have a go and join the Westpac family. Have a go. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.